Leadership often feels like a pendulum swing. We're either going full speed, running with our hair on fire, on adrenaline, with endless to-do lists, or we're so drained that we start checking out until we're checked out completely. And most of us live at one of these extremes, overdrive or shutdown, and both leave us stuck. Neither of those pathways lead to what we're really looking for. Endless hustle burns us out. Disengagement leaves our teams stranded and our vision begins to die. Neither of these creates the kind of steady leadership or sustainable productivity that our people and the world deserve. Dawn, you and I have heard so many leaders say this: I just can't keep up this pace.
Yep.
And they're right, because leadership isn't about running so hard that we eventually crash or pulling back so far that we disappear from sight. It's about finding a rhythm that allows us to stay connected, present, and effective and productive over the long haul.
That's right.
The hard truth is, when we don't manage our pace, the pressure of our lives will manage that for us. I'm going to say it one more time because it's worth repeating. The hard truth is, when we don't manage our pace, if we don't own our pace, then the pressures of our lives will own it for us and determine how we operate. And you and I talked earlier, Dawn, about how this is where we start to find ourselves moving more and more toward a reactive way of engaging life rather than being proactive. This is where the tail starts wagging the dog, per se. And when that happens, we're not leading, we're just reacting.
That's right. And this is where so many of us get caught. How many of you listeners have literally told yourself this lie? I'm going to slow down next week when things get easier.
Yeah.
I have to get over this next big push and then I'll be able to take a break. I just got to keep pushing. And the reality is, like, the next week brings its own new crises and its own new hills that we have to continue to push ourselves up. Things don't ease up. That moment that we're like holding our breath for, it never comes. So here's the question: why do leaders keep swinging? Why do we think that it's like those are our two options, hustle or exhaustion, pushing or, burnout?
Yeah.
How do we break that cycle? So, as you said, that we are looking at productivity over a long haul, not productivity this week or this month. Like, help us break that down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, let me say this, and then we'll jump into this. I think there's a paradigm shift that is required for many of us. And that paradigm shift is because for many of us, at least in North American or United States culture, we've been sold what I believe is a lie, that workaholism should be a badge of honor and pride that we wear. Right? How many times have we hung out with friends? Oh, I've been putting 90 hours a week in this, but it's not to say that there aren't times when there's a sprint, when we push kind of the limits of our abilities to cross a line, to get a breakthrough, to finish a project. We understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But when people start to fall into this as a lifestyle, and then the only way to recover from that is to buy into this lie. Well, that this is just the way you become successful. This is the way that you accomplish greater things. And in success and accomplishments do require hard work. But what we're suggesting in this podcast session today is it requires a different kind of hard work, an intentionality of understanding who we are as human beings that allows us to develop a way of life that delivers on long-term sustainable results rather than the short-term big results that eventually leave us crashed and burned high and dry.
Yeah.
So most of us confuse activity with effectiveness. We think the harder we work, the better the results. And sometimes that is true. So I don't want to rob people of that. Sometimes we do need to put in some hard work.
Mm-hmm.
But busyness isn't the same as productivity, and it's definitely not the same as leadership. When the pendulum swings too far into hustle, we overfunction, we micromanage, and we drain ourselves. When it swings into disengagement, right, which is where we're inevitably going to end up once we start burning out, we withdraw and begin to plateau. We go through the motions, but we're not really present with our people.
Yeah. And it's not even, we can't be present. We have overfunctioned to the point where we're literally like need to stare at a blank wall for an extended period of time to recover. But the costs of that overfunctioning shows up quickly. Teams either feel the weight of the overdrive, right? We all know leaders who are never satisfied with how much time and effort we are putting in. It's never enough. Or our teams feel the absence of our presence, right? We've burnt out, and now our only option is to disengage. And neither one of those leadership standpoints inspires trust with your team or creates the type of momentum necessary to accomplish great things.
I love that. Which means without sustainable rhythms, leadership becomes inconsistent. People never know which version of us they're going to get, which you just said. The overdriven version or the checked out version, and that inconsistency erodes trust. And so let me pause here and share out of the overflow of my journey. So years ago, my wife and I were both part of a team in a similar industry, in the coaching industry. And this team started as a very small team, kind of like a little Navy SEAL, team. We worked so hard and we were able to accomplish great things. Then the team began to grow and grow and grow. Now, here's the irony. My wife and I enjoyed the mentorship of the couple that started the company. And in our personal lives, they introduced us to this paradigm shift. They said, hey, listen, guys, for you to have a healthy marriage, for you to have healthy physical bodies, for you to have healthy sleep, for you to have, as they pointed toward health in any area of our lives, they continuously pointed at the importance of remembering that we're human beings, not human doings. That we are designed very much in the same way that a lot of nature reflects back to us, that we're wired to have seasons of fruitfulness, but then there has to be seasons of rest. Like there's a tree in my front yard here in San Diego, a persimmons tree, which if you've not ever had persimmons, one of the most amazing fruits ever.
And this is not the first time you've talked about persimmons on the podcast.
And it won't be the last, I promise, because they're just amazing. I believe if there was a Garden of Eden, if you know that this was the forbidden fruit that nobody was supposed to touch because it's that good. Anyways, so we have this tree, and I remember when we moved in, it was just like, it looked dead. And I remember thinking like, we're going to have to get this tree removed. And then a few months later, that was in January. And then in spring, it blossomed with all these leaves and it was beautiful and green. And then it produces all this fruit through November, December. And then guess what happened in January? The cold comes and guess what? The tree looked like it died again. But really what that tree is doing is it's illustrating to us that it goes through natural seasons of rest and recovery and rejuvenation. The roots go deeper in preparation for a new season of growth and increased fruitfulness. And anybody who understands, that world of, what is it called? The
horticulture
understands, what we're talking about. But it's no different than, when we drive our cars require certain intervals of maintenance.
Yes.
And that might be just getting gas on a regular basis. That might be ensuring the tire pressure is okay, adding windshield wiper fluid, getting an oil change, all the way to the big, whatever they are, 10,000, 30,000 mile, big maintenance checkups. But we understand those rhythms, the importance of how the input has to match the output. So we're learning this from these mentors and this other business. And we're learning the importance of creating the rhythms for our marriage, like, date night and, coffee conversations on a Saturday or Sunday morning to talk about the week before and the week ahead, and times with our kids and workout routines. And it's like a huge paradigm shift because we really believe that to be more successful, we just had to keep working harder and harder and harder and harder.
Yeah.
And so we're learning this, like the value of like, hey, the input has to match the output, right? The irony is, on the business side, we would push as a team, and our my mentor / boss would say, we're taking this hill. in whatever project it was. It might have been the release of a new book, or it might have been, a new service that we were providing for clients. And we would take the hill and get the breakthrough and celebrate for like half a second before it was like, here's the next hill. And we were like, whoa. And I remember us even as a family going, okay, we'll take a vacation after this push. Oh, we'll take some time off after this push. We'll rest after this push. And we got to the point where it became a lifestyle of push, 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 push. And the adrenaline rush of accomplishment, the adrenaline rush of a growing notoriety and reputation within the business, the dopamine hits of feeling successful and accomplishment was so strong that it almost drove us into this mindset that we convinced ourselves that's okay.
Right.
And what we noticed over time, we didn't see it immediately, but over time, we started to see the effect of this kind of workaholic mindset on the business side. Marriages within our team were feeling strained. People's physical health, everybody was gaining weight. Why? Because what happens is when you're push, you're going to find some way to recover. And because we didn't have enough time to rest and rejuvenate and recreate in a healthy way, we started turning to forms of medication like alcohol and other stupid things to kind of give us a little sense of like, okay, at least I'm taking care of myself.
Taking the edge off a little bit.
Taking the edge off so I can get back into the battlefield and keep going and push. And it ultimately was a significant factor in the downfall of that organization. That like for like 5 to 7 years, it was like a shooting star. And we all know a shooting star in the distance eventually fizzles out. You don't see it anymore. And that's what happened to our business. And it had a dramatic impact. So the irony is that this same couple was mentoring us in our personal life, in our marriage, with our kids, in our finances, in our taking care of ourselves physically in one way that felt really healthy and life-giving. But then when we would go to work, it was like there was this incessant need to push. And it created this real interesting juxtaposition for my wife and I, realizing, whoa, one of these is actually producing long-term sustainable effectiveness, efficiency, and productivity in our personal lives. But this other side is actually creating detrimental realities. And it wasn't until we left that organization, once it kind of fell apart, that we realized, wow, you know what, that 5 to 7 years of incredible output and breakthrough and accomplishment, the big question in mind was that worth the loss of some of these people's marriages? Was that worth the loss of their health? Was that worth the loss of their emotional well-being? Was that, because what we started to realize was, if we're not careful, the push mindset requires a sacrifice.
That's right.
And so we didn't realize all the things that we were sacrificing on the altar of more productivity, more accomplishment. And because in the business side, we were not honoring it was the irony, the very thing that we were learning was actually bringing incredible benefit for us personally at a personal level. Just making sense? I'd love to hear what you connect with.
It makes complete sense. And at the same time, it's really disheartening that those same leaders were like instilling such incongruent teachings in their personal life and in how the business played out. But I think probably all of our leaders or all of our listeners can recognize times in their past where they've worked with leaders who there is no celebration. There is no time of like, we did it. Okay, now let's regroup and get ready to go again. It's that idea that we continually move the field goal, right? And maybe we do that for ourselves. I'm guilty of that myself. Like, I set a goal. Once I get it, that goal no longer even matters because I'm busy looking at the next goal that I need to accomplish and overtake. But if we're not careful, it's like your car analogy. If I don't take the minor inconvenience, if I don't honor the minor rhythm of taking my car in to get the oil changed, stopping to put gas in the car, right? In the moment, those are like, God, I really don't have time for this.
Yeah.
I wish I could just keep driving to this next event that I'm going to. If we don't take those minor moments of inconvenience, we end up with a major disruptive inconvenience because the car breaks down, we run out of gas on the freeway. Now we are forced to deal with a very significant disruption.
Oof.
When we could have been handling those in very small, yes, sure, they're maybe frustrating or disruptive in the moment, but they're manageable. They're manageable and especially when we create rhythms around it. I found if I get gas on Thursday evening when I take my daughter to dance, I'm good for the rest of the week. So if I honor that rhythm, suddenly I don't have to worry about it on Saturday afternoon when I'm running between events that I am going to run out of gas.
That's so good. That's so good. It's interesting. I wonder for our listeners if they can relate to or even reflect on a story from their own life where they can look back and realize that they were broken down on the side of the road in some area of their life. We're using a metaphor, of course, because they refused to pay attention to the indicators on the dashboard of the car, trying to let them know, alert them to, hey, you need gas. Hey, you need to check your brakes. Hey, you need to check the engine. Hey, whatever it is, right? And I think that's what's so difficult is that when we get into this reactive lifestyle and we get into this push, push, push mentality, I think what happens is we begin to lose sight of those indicators, those warning signs that are just trying to let us know, hey, it's time to slow down. It's time to pay attention to the input of your life. And does it match and will it sustain the desired output? Yeah. Because we're not saying we shouldn't have high levels of efficiency and productivity and output in our life. Like as human beings, I think we're designed and wired to work and to accomplish great things and to build things and to, go far further than we could ever have imagined. However, do we give ourselves permission to slow down often enough? Though it's an inconvenience for many people to slow down, to take time off, to rest, to rejuvenate, to reflect. But will we give ourselves permission so that we're not waiting until we're broken down on the side of the road in our relationships, in our health, in our finances, in our business, even with our teams, with, particular high performing team members or with clients before we realize, man, there's a price to be paid. We're either going to pay it on the front end through healthy inputs, or we're going to pay it a bigger price on the back end through significant consequences.
And another way to ask that same question is, am I going to pay the price in a way that I have control over?
Ooh, that's good. That's really good. Yeah.
Or am I going to pay the price when my body, my car, my relationship just has had enough, gives out?
That is, yeah. That's one of those ones I feel like I just need to sit in because it in many ways captures seasons of my life where I was running with my hair on fire and I was just push, push, push and ignoring all the signs on the dashboard of my life. And sometimes it was my wife, sometimes it was one of my kids, sometimes it was my doctor, sometimes it was a close friend, sometimes it was some person in my life that reflected back to me, oh, there's a big consequence because you haven't been paying attention, because you have not attended to the necessary inputs. You are now functioning in a way that is unhelpful, even though you think you're just pushing and you're going to get the breakthrough, but you are now reaping particular consequences that could have been avoided. Right. And thankfully, we've committed our lives to learning from those significant moments and recalibrating and then developing these helpful principles so that others might avoid those, what I call unnecessarily consequential outcomes before we wake up to the fact that like, hey, I've really got to pay more attention. So let me do this. Let me jump into this paradigm shift that I foreshadowed earlier. So here's the shift I'm talking about. The answer to this conversation, the solution is not to live in extremes. even though we're tempted to, right? It's the work hard all week and then crash on the weekends, work hard all week and crash. I mean, I've talked to so many clients. They're just like, that's my lifestyle. I work my butt off all week and then I crash on the weekends, right?
Mhm.
And it's not chasing some perfect balance because, right, anything that you find balance in, life changes, seasons change, circumstances change. So it's not about finding a perfect balance because that doesn't really exist. The solution is learning to find regular rhythms, or what we would call predictable patterns. Some
Right.
people might call them routines, rituals, disciplines, whatever word works best for you. I'm always going to avoid the word discipline. So predictable pattern sounds nicer. But to discover, to be on the lookout for, to find the appropriate predictable patterns or healthy rhythms that drive a different lifestyle. Right? Healthy leadership means we know how to move between work and rest, productivity and renewal without getting stuck in either place. And I love the image of that we're about to jump into with this tool that we call the productivity pendulum.
Mhm.
Because what it does is it provides for us a simple illustration. And we've all seen one of these pendulums on somebody's office desk, right? Where you pull the ball, to one side and then you let it go. And what the laws of physics would suggest that it will swing to the other side to the distance from which it started on the opposite side. Right. And so that gives us this clue into the way that we're designed, which is to the degree that we invest into the health of who we are as human beings, mentally, emotionally, physically, relationally, spiritually, financially, is the degree to which we will then be more productive and efficient and effective and impactful in our lives. Right. But there's a direct correlation between the two, that the output matches the input. This image that the tool, the productivity pendulum, which, by the way, for our listeners, you can go back to the first season and listen to a whole episode where we
And see the images and all of that. We have them in the show notes and everything.
Show notes for the images, all that kind of fun stuff. But it gives us language for what we're already experiencing and a reminder that the healthiest leaders don't live at the edges. We're not pushing on either side to say, I got to stay in rest or I've got to stay in work. It's learning to live in the tension between those two and practice the rhythm of working and resting, pressing forward and pausing, reset. So here's the paradigm shift in a nutshell. It's remembering that we're human beings before we're human doings.
Mhm.
Really powerful thought. We're human beings before we're human doings. Another way to say this is that we're designed to work from rest.
Yes.
Not rest from work. Let's just think about that for a second. We're not designed to rest from work. We're designed to work from rest. In other words, we prioritize rest, the input that invests into ourselves, into our marriages, into our families, the necessary energy that allows us then to swing back out into whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish in the world. Is this making sense?
Yeah, but it's exactly upside down from how we tend to look at things, which is I'm going to work my ass off and then I'm going to crash. I'm going to work. And then once I've earned my rest by working hard enough, then I will.
Okay. Let's just capture what you just said. Because I think that's the old paradigm.
Mhm.
I've earned my
Yes.
rest. I've earned my vacation. I've earned my weekend. I've earned my time on the golf course. I've earned. That is the mindset that leads people into that lie of I have to earn this time to rest and recreate and rejuvenate. Rather than we're flipping that on its head. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, it's great.
Right. This dispels this whole idea that, workaholism is a badge of honor in our culture, to say we want to be hard workers and effective and productive, but we have to understand that it flows from. We don't work hard enough to earn the right to rest. We have to make sure we're resting well so that we have enough of what we need to actually work well.
That's right.
Totally different priority set.
It is. And as we've given so many examples of how this is reflected, different analogies of where we see this in nature, in our cars, and our personal lives. But what are some of the key indicators? Because we at Empower, we have some very specific things that we can point to that say, this means I'm resting well, right? Rest isn't just crashing. Rest isn't numbing. Rest isn't just the absence of work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So give us some of those key indicators that we use with our clients that helps them know that they're resting well.
I love that. I like to think through this through the lens of what most people would understand from a financial perspective is our life is about making investments, and what is the ROI on that, the return on investment for that particular area. And I think we understand this pretty well when it comes to finances. But I don't think we think of this through the lens of every other area of our life, right? Our time, our energy, our mental wherewithal, our emotional capacity, all of it is resource that we get to invest. So when we think of, the intentionality around swinging to the rest side of the pendulum, right? You're right. It's not just the absence of work. It's actually the intentional investment into a few things. Let me just name a few of them. Number one, it's investing into who we are as human beings, our sense of identity, right? Our sense of who we are, our core values, our sense of vision and mission for our life. What gives us a sense of significance and purpose? It's about making sure that we get to operate out of the overflow of who we are, not what everybody else wants us to be. Right. And we're not going to go too deep into this right now because it's a very big conversation, but I just simply refer to this as our personhood. Like, are we making the appropriate investments into our person? For me, some of those predictable patterns or disciplines or rhythms or routines is I journal on a regular basis, and there are a particular set of reflective questions that I use to help me make sure that I'm investing into who I am as a human being, staying connected to my core values, the vision and mission of my life.
Yes.
Right. A second thing is that we're intentionally investing into the partnerships, right? So yes, this is an alliteration. Every word starts with a P. So the partnerships of our life, right? Because we are naturally social tribal creatures, and everything that we want to accomplish in life requires partnership with other people. You want to build a family, you got to have other people involved. You want to build a business, you got to have other people. You have hobbies. Unless your hobby is sitting alone by yourself somewhere in the middle of the desert, it's going to require engaging with other people. You want to buy groceries, it probably requires engaging with other people. Anything requires an engagement with other people. But we have to identify what are the primary partnerships that we need to make an intentional investment into that will allow us to swing into all the other areas of our life with greater sense of clarity, energy, and productivity. So for me, that would be my spouse, my 2 adult kids. On our team, that would be people like you and Aura, right? My older brother's one of those people. It's just, who are the people that I need to invest in those partnerships, those relationships, because those are the relationships that will support me and fuel me as I swing back out to fight for and try to accomplish anything in life, right? Let me just give us a couple more ideas, right? So there's personhood, there's partnerships, there's perspective. We have to invest into perspective because life is coming at us so fast. We become reactive. We lose sight of what matters to us. We lose sight of the things that we want to make sure we're investing our time and energy into. And so in order to move away from a reactive lifestyle, we have to move toward a proactive, which means we have to slow down to ask the question, what do I want to give my time and energy to today, this week, this month, this quarter, this year? Right, because we're
fighting for worth all of these sacrifices right? Like that rest helps us realign that perspective that sometimes when we're in the weeds,
100%.
we get caught up in.
Yeah. So we need to invest in however it is that we can reconnect to a healthy perspective so that we're not over investing or overreacting to the circumstances of life around us. The number of times I spend with people who will spend minutes, if not hours, droning on and complaining about X, Y, or Z. And then you kind of go, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does this matter to your life? Yeah. Oh, it's only like a 1 or a 2. But I'm like, why are you spending so much time and energy complaining or bitching and moaning or worrying about something that really doesn't have much impact for value in your life right now, right?
Yes.
And for some of us, that could be, an overconsumption of political issues online. For other people, it could be, worrying about, some social dynamic that we're dealing with in our country. For other people, it's worried about what's happening across the world in a place that we have no connection to and no relevance to. It's not to say that those things don't matter, but if everything matters, then nothing really matters. And so we've got to hone in on our perspective so that we can, here's the last one, so we can invest appropriately into the appropriate priorities. How do we prioritize what needs our time and energy, what deserves our investment? Because that is what's going to determine our output. And if we want a greater return on our output, then we have to make sure that that investment strategy is, first of all, strategic in nature, and that it reflects an appropriate perspective rooted in who we are as human beings. So that's just a quick little idea of, hey, if these are things that we're paying attention to and we're investing into, there's other things we could talk about like play and power and all kinds of other things. But these are things that if we're investing into is a good chance that first of all of those require that we slow down, that we pay attention, a practice of self-awareness, and that if you think about it from a kind of a war perspective, like you don't go into battle until you've considered what you have available in terms of resource, whether that's people, ammunition, artillery, strategy. It's no different than what we just talked about. Like we wouldn't go into war unless we believed we had what it took to win the war. And that's what that input side of the pendulum reminds us. Hey, let's make sure that we have what we need before we go into battle every day.
Yeah, that's right. So what does this look like? We've talked about a lot of stories in our own lives of how we've experienced this. How can our listeners start to put this into practice for themselves? How do we break that cycle? Some of those really ingrained beliefs that we have about earning rest and hustle culture and all of the things that we're battling against with this conversation.
Yeah, let me start by just reminding our listeners that we're in the process of building a business. And those don't happen by accident, and it doesn't grow by magic. It requires a lot of time, energy, and resource invested into it. And we're hustling and we're fighting hard. However, what we do as a team is we work really hard to ensure that there's an appropriate level of intentionality on the input side, right? For us as individuals, for us as a team, to make sure that we're investing into who we are and who are the partners that we need to lean into and work with. And let's make sure we have the appropriate perspective so that we can set our priorities, so that we're at least as strategic as we know how to be about how we're going to leverage the resources that we have. So we're constantly trying to grow our resource, and then we're investing that resource as we swing back out into the work side. So some simple things, I think, I always think it's helpful to think through the framework of daily, weekly, and seasonal predictable patterns, routines, disciplines, whatever people like. Every day we eat, every day we sleep, every day we brush our teeth, and we probably maybe take a shower. Every day we engage with certain people. So we already have these in our life. The question is, are those intentional? Are they designed, or have they just been, is it just a matter of we're now reacting to the world around us, and so we're just doing what's in front of us? So I would say on a daily basis to simply ask the question, what are my predictable patterns? What are the rituals or routines that I already engage with? I think we need to take an inventory of our daily rituals and routines. I think we need to do that for our weeks. I think we need to do that for our seasons. When I talk about a season, I mean like, every quarter or every 6 months, right? And then from there to simply start to assess, where in my life do I feel like I'm operating out of high resource? And where in my life do I feel like I'm operating out of low resource, right? Where's my fuel tank full? Where is it feeling more empty? And then to simply ask the question, okay, in those areas where I feel full, what is it that I'm doing? What are the intentional investments that I'm doing daily, weekly, or seasonally that are refueling that tank?
Yep.
Right? So that we begin to connect the dots. Oh, I feel full in this area and resource. because I'm probably making an investment, whether I realize it or not, that is filling that tank. Now, again, where do I feel empty? Where do I feel like I'm lacking? Well, it's probably, you can tie it back to a lack of intentional investments, whether there are no investments or there are unhelpful investments, right? And then we begin to ask the question, okay, how do I recalibrate my daily and weekly or seasonal investment strategies, my routines, my rhythms, my predictable patterns, so that I can best fill up the tanks that I need, I'm using that metaphorically, to fill up the tanks I need so that I have the fuel, I have the resource to be able to swing into these different responsibilities in my life in a way that feels like I'm going with clarity, with confidence, and with courage.
That's right. And I think when we think of breaking this down into daily, weekly, seasonal habits or patterns, like as we like to say, that's what makes this doable. Because it's not about feeling like you have to overhaul your whole calendar. We're not asking you to go to a monastery and do an extended silent retreat. It's about weaving in small patterns of rest that keep you grounded, that then refresh you and send you back out to do the work that you're called to do, and to do it well and sustainably.
Yeah. And the good news is, there are so many podcast books, there's so much available online that gives us all the data we need to understand that there are just a variety of inputs in our life that we just know are incredibly important, right? So let's just take an obvious one. Like, we all need sleep. How many hours a night do we need? And how do you know if it's good sleep? And we've got all kinds of, bracelets we can wear and other products to like really help us hone in on it. But we all know that sleep is a really important, predictable pattern that if we intentionalize that investment, for some of us, if we just sleep for an hour or two, we think, well, I slept. But okay, how do you feel the next day? Like, how's the fuel tank? How about at the end of the week? If you're doing this over and over and over again, right? Are you getting the output you want, the return on investment? And okay, let's assess the input. Well, the input is I'm only getting a few hours of sleep a night. Well, okay, then we probably need to recalibrate that. And then you can recalibrate that investment. And then over the next week or two, determine, is that giving me a better output? Like, is my fuel tank in that area more filled up? Do I feel better? Do I feel more energized, more clear, more?
Yeah.
And so I think for all of us, I think we intuitively know we have all these different patterns in our life. It's more about the intentionality of slowing down to ask the question, how do we intentionalize the investment into our input so that we can optimize our output? And unfortunately, I think most people are more concerned about their output because of this desire to be more productive and successful, that pressure, at the expense of paying attention to our input, and oftentimes don't realize something needs to change until it's too late.
That's right.
When we go back to those kind of, what's the right word? Unchangeable consequences, right? That we end up coming face to face with because we've ignored the conversation that we're having today.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Anything else, Dawn, on this conversation? Obviously, we could talk about this for days because it's such a big part of what we do with clients, because almost every client we ever work with, because they're trying to build something awesome, this becomes a really important point of engagement as they start to realize, gosh, I don't know that the way I'm operating today is sustainable.
Can't keep this up.
Yes, can't keep this up.
That's right. No, I think, like you said, we could keep talking about it, but I think let's wrap this up for today.
Love it. Hey, thanks to our amazing listeners for joining us today. We love you. We appreciate you entrusting this time to us. We want to continue to add value to your life, to your leadership. If this conversation has helped you think differently about your pace of life, share it with another leader who might be feeling the same pressure, and make sure that you have subscribed, because next week we're going to be talking about boundaries. Oh my gosh, that's another big conversation. Why so many of us struggle to set them, and how the absence of boundaries erodes our leadership and our teams. Until next time.
See you then.